Welcome to the Resume Storyteller, bringing you interviews with industry experts, regular folks who tested the job search waters and succeeded, and strategies to tell your story and land you job interviews. Here's your host, Virginia Franco.
I have with me Career Club founder and president, Bob Goodwin. Bob has as the founder and president of Career Club, he has a unique service that uses proven sales and marketing methods to help clients land a career that matters to them. The inspiration for Career Club was born from his experience leading client engagements for global brands like Coca-Cola, Samsung, and P&G, where he saw the opportunity to blend marketing principles with sales technology to conduct effective job search campaigns. Bob, thank you so much for joining me. We've been connected now for a few years, but this is the first time we've been able to really get together and chat.
No, Virginia, it's great to be with you. And yeah, I'm really excited that we finally have the chance to get connected here. So thank you.
You heard me give a brief overview of Career Club and what you do, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about what prompted you to start this company and how you transitioned into the career space.
Yeah. So as you said, my career has been sales and marketing and, which I really love. Along the way, and I probably just being a salesperson, sales leader, doing a lot of networking. And as you know, when you do a lot of networking, you tend to bump into people who are in job transition and, I'd be happy to meet with you, kind of pay it forward. And what I observed very quickly was sort of two things. One is people were not very good with their messaging. Kind of the tell me about yourself, tell me what are you looking for. It would just get garbled almost immediately. And okay, so there's a big branding opportunity here for people to get their message right. And then the second bit is they didn't really think of their job search as the sales campaign that it is. And if we were on video, you would watch me, make a funnel. And you're filling a bunch of stuff up at the top of a funnel like a salesperson would with prospects and opportunities, knowing that they're not all going to close, but you need enough stuff working so that you can make your quota at the end of the month, quarter, year, or whatever. And, as we tell our clients, the good news is you have a quota of one, you only need one new company. But most people don't think of, their job search as like a sales campaign, and therefore they don't work enough opportunities. And what they do is they get too emotionally attached to one or two. And then when they inevitably fall apart for whatever reason, usually nothing to do with the candidate, they're crushed. And then they also have to start all over again. And a salesperson would never bank on making their number based on one prospect. Like they know they need to have more stuff going. So anyway, long story short is, between people needing help with their messaging, and then just making sure that they've got, sufficient activity level were sort of the two kind of main ideas or main needs that I saw in the marketplace. And then just very quickly, what kind of kickstarted it all was the pandemic. And when you see 30 million, 40 million people, went on unemployment this month, a friend of mine that knows what I'm passionate about this, he's like, dude, when are you going to make this your career? This is like what you love to do. And, I'm at a stage in my career where I can make a choice. And so I'm like, you know what, if not now, when? And so the Career Club was born.
Oh, I love that. I like you, I've always thought of job search as very similar to sales and marketing. And one thing that I think lends itself well to people with a sales and marketing background once they make the connection is that they are skilled at getting past the gatekeepers in a way that people that aren't in sales aren't. And that's a big part of job search is trying to bypass applicant tracking software system and getting in front of the people that can really influence a decision.
Yeah. And so that's such a great point, Virginia. And thanks for bringing that up because, that's, again, part of what we have to teach people. And I liken an online job posting to a request for proposal, an RFP that a company might put out there. And any salesperson usually hates RFPs.
Yeah.
because you're dealing with procurement, not the decision maker. You have no impact on the process. You just sort of throw your bid into a black box and hope and pray that somebody calls you back on another day telling you that you've advanced in their procurement process. That's pretty much exactly what happens with online job applications.
Yeah.
Except, procurement is called talent acquisition, and you go into the ATS and you hope and pray somebody calls you back. And as a salesperson, we would never do that. We would have a territory, which means we would have identified, prospects. And so, all right, well, who are the XD companies that are my target companies that, are in my territory? Now, who's a decision maker at that company, or decision makers or decision influencers? How do I connect to those people, either networking or find, a valid business reason to reach out to them and establish direct contact with the decision maker?
Exactly.
That's what salespeople do all day, every day.
They do it all day in and day out. Yep. And it's amazing how many people in sales and marketing don't see that connection.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, 100%. It's like, dude, this is what you do all day.
Yeah. No, it's really, it's
case
true advantage.
Behaviors.
Right. So in your experience, both as a hiring manager for many years, I'm sure, as well as what you do today in your work supporting job seekers, what do you see as a couple of common and major challenges facing people that are either, testing out the job search waters or maybe looking to make a career pivot?
Yeah. So we've kind of touched on both of them. We can do a little bit of a deeper dive.
Okay.
One is on messaging. So I wrote a job search course called Making Your Own Weather. And again, kind of salespeople don't just sit around and complain about bad conditions or whatever. They go and make something happen. And that was sort of the genesis of, well, if you don't like the rain, go make some sunshine. One of the very early chapters in that is around branding. And what is your value proposition? What problems do you solve for a company, and how do you articulate those? And as you know, as a first-class resume writer, people get very stuck just on that. And or say, well, tell me, Julie, what's the role that you're looking for? Well, I've done a lot of different things. I've been in sales. I've been in operations. I've got some HR background. And I'm like, stop. Like, you're immediately going in the junk drawer of my mind. I don't know what to do with you. I don't know what you are. But from the candidate's perspective, what they think they're doing is keeping their options open, and it's having the opposite effect. Because now I don't know how to help you because you can't tell me what you want. The other analogy is like, hey, can you give me directions? Okay, well, where are you trying to get to? I don't really know. Well, I don't know what the directions I don't know are. So one is getting people to have enough courage and conviction to say, this is what I'm looking for. This is what the role is called. This is the functional area. And this is what and you can have a couple of them, but you can't have 20, this is what I'm targeting. I think that is one, thing that people need help with. The other, and this might be very relevant, as we're recording this, where layoffs, are, increasing, unfortunately, is people's emotional state and their attitude. That's actually the first chapter, in Making Your Own Weather. Is all about attitude, because, sometimes like when people get let go from a company and they're told, well, you need to start networking, Virginia, you need to go network. And, it's like, okay, but if I'm still angry and upset and hurt by what happened to me in my last company, a lot of that conversation tends to be around, let me tell you how badly I was treated. Let me tell you unfair.
Yeah, and they can't move on to the next.
And they can't move on. And, this is a Nelson Mandela quote that goes something along the lines of, bitterness is like taking poison and waiting for the other person to die. It might make you feel good to vent for a few minutes, but you're really creating the exact wrong brand impression in the other person's mind. It's like, oh, you're that guy. Like, of course, you never want to be that guy, who's negative. You're trashing your last employer. And as you know, those are third rail kinds of behaviors that you see people doing. So we're very much about trying to get people to a good emotional, at least to neutral emotionally, but really help them find the benefits of, being in job search. And you're going to meet a bunch of cool people that you never would have met before. It's going to restore your faith in humanity of how many people there are out there who want to help you. And you're going to be a different person on another day, because now you're going to start taking people's phone calls when they're in job transition and paying it forward. So
to me, I love the idea of getting someone to neutral emotionally. And to me, when I know that person's there, when they can describe what happened in one or two sentences, and it's clear they're ready to just move on.
yes.
And usually they don't tell you why they don't tell you about why they left, unless where someone says, well, why'd you leave? Why are you looking? When that question pops up, then they have it. They answer that. But when people start going on longer than two sentences, I know that they're not ready to have a real conversation about getting help for their job, because I guess more importantly,
Hey, Virginia, our
speaking very well today. The messaging is so painful and anger and hurt, and it makes the person at the other end sort of question what's going on.
Yeah, and so you bring up a really good point. Again, this would be kind of a sales behavior, which is, so people freak out on, well, why'd you leave your last company? And they'll, a lot of times go into chapter and verse and ramble for a pretty long time on what that is. And I love what you said, it's like one or two sentences. Less is more in this. And the idea is to be concise, and to use your kind of best and fewest reasons. So, well, the company was under a lot of financial pressure, and so they were forced to make some fairly draconian cuts. And unfortunately, I got caught up in that. Okay.
But what I love about that is that shows it's not about you and your performance. You're part of a bigger,
and it took me 7 seconds to say that.
That's right. That's right. And it shows you are ready to move on to that's in the past. Let's focus on the future.
Exactly.
I love that. So what advice do you have for somebody that is thinking about launching their job search? When you're lucky enough to get those people that aren't halfway through and things aren't going well, where do you advise them to get started?
Well, first base is, what are you looking for? What's the role?
Okay.
What's the level? What's the industry? That's one where people get fairly stuck. Again, it's kind of like, I want to keep my options open. And you asked me about pivoting, and we can talk about that kind of in the context of this as well, is companies believe that industry is a very high order priority, that you need to have come from whatever it is that we do, or else the learning curve is going to be too long. So, when we're working with somebody, like I encourage them to not leave their brand equity based on their industry experience in a pile over there. It's like, even if you want to go to something that's adjacent to it, find something that is related to things that you have done in the past, ideally, unless there's a super compelling reason to not. But to say, that I want to go from being, an architect to a dentist, it's right. Like, okay, but that's a pretty big leap. Yeah, but I'm really interested in that. Well, okay, but do you have any background in it?
You need to show you need to show something that either you need to show the connections.
Exactly.
To why this pivot makes sense. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's 100% incumbent on the candidate to connect those dots, in the mind of the other person. Because, hiring by its very nature is a risky business. And when there's, gaps, I don't mean like, employment gaps, but like, these dots are not very closely connected between being an architect and a dentist. It's incumbent on the candidate to show, actually, there's a ton of transferable skills. Right. Let me help you understand those.
Right. No, you're right. I am working with a client right now who's been in the same industry for the last 15 years. But prior to that, he had lots of industry diversity. And he really does want to pivot. So we talked about how to position him as someone who can pivot from industries. We need to show right at the very top, I've worked across all these industries, and then speak to the common skills and achievements in the top as well. So that at least the reader is not scratching their head going, well, how can he possibly quickly learn my industry if he hasn't been in it?
Yeah, well, it's clearly for that person, that's a demonstrated behavior that they're a quick and agile learner.
That's right.
And they can pick it up. So to your question though about how we start engaging with somebody who's new in the process.
Yeah. So role, level, industry, clear on your target clarity.
Yeah, attitude, which we have talked about, messaging, which we have talked about, and then coming up with a target list of companies that are going to help drive your networking, and also proactive company outreach. We talked earlier about RFPs and job postings. And again, you're more of an expert in this than I am. The what is it, 70, 80%, pick your favorite big number. Most jobs are not listed, or they come through kind of back channels. And so, but you need to have a list of companies that there is a strategic reason why I have curated a list of 20 to 40 companies that I'm targeting, that you can share with people, that you can go to LinkedIn and identify, like, who do you already have in your network that can help make the connections. And then the last thing that I'll say is, and this is really important, is we also help clients download their LinkedIn contacts and prioritize their top 100 to 200 to jumpstart their networking activities. Again, when we're typically talking about non-salespeople, what we find is, Virginia, tell me about how your networking's going. Oh my gosh, I was so busy last week. Really? Tell me about it. I had 3 networking calls last week. I'm like, oh my gosh, you need like 3 a day, not 3 in a week. And so really kind of helping people jumpstart their networking activity. So again, just to recap, it's attitude, it's messaging, it's outreach and target companies and jumpstarting their networking. Those are the things that we kind of initially really help people with. And then, then you have to go activate against all those things.
Well, what I love is that you didn't say, well, the first thing you need is a resume, because without these bits of information, especially the clarity on the role, level, and industry, as well as the kinds of companies that are interesting to you, that to me, that informs everything that you write. How I write for someone that is targeting the startup world is very different from someone who's targeting, the Fortune 100 space. And so knowing that can really enrich in what your career marketing looks like.
Well, I know that
collateral, like your LinkedIn, your resume, all of that.
So many of those things exactly are the discovery that you would do with a client, right? To help them create the collateral that's going to tell their story.
No, that's right. You're right.
And to present themselves so they can be found for what they want to be found for.
That's right. And even, you brought up the idea of job postings that don't exist. And I know that when you get to the larger companies, those roles, they are advertised online, but by the time they come out, those postings come out, so much has happened on the back end of discussions and pre-qualification that by the time the postings come out, there's already a whole pipeline of people that are they're pre-qualified.
That's
and
exactly
it shortens
right.
their job search. So my husband has gotten his last 2 jobs literally where, as an afterthought, the HR person said, "Oh gosh, you need to go submit your resume online." After he'd had the discussions, after the letter was in hand, and that he's one of dozens of people that I work with where that happens. So, and that's at established companies with established HR organizations and job postings and all of that. So.
What candidates don't understand sometimes is, like, if I'm the hiring manager and I've got Bob who's in a given role right now, and Bob's like, okay, he's like a B, maybe even a B minus. Not my biggest problem today. And all of a sudden Virginia shows up and I see her credentials. It's like, what the heck am I putting up with Bob for when I could have Virginia? And so you create the need. Or, the person's, driving to Louisville and just thinking about work and stuff. It's like, what I think we need? I think we're finally ready for this director of strategic planning. And lo and behold, somebody shows up on my desk who's qualified as a director of strategic planning. The role was in my head. It wasn't, out there on LinkedIn
all the time. Yeah.
And it does happen all the time, but non-salespeople, this is a fundamental mindset of, I don't have permission to reach out to that company. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. If you've got, a strong message and you know what your value proposition is, and that's an appropriate company where your skills could help, them grow their business, then you have every right in the world to reach out to them. What you don't have the right to is just spam people with irrelevant resumes, for you're just putting stuff out there that you don't have a right to. But if you can target the right people and you know your value proposition and you know generally the kinds of things they're trying to solve for, it's almost like you're doing them a disservice by not reaching out.
You're doing them a favor. I was going to say, when someone realizes that they have a need and that you're the person to help solve that problem, you're doing them a favor. So
exactly. And that's the part that non-salespeople, and to your earlier point, sometimes salespeople don't make the connection. It's like, oh, I guess you're right. But, if you've never been trained in this, you wouldn't know to think this way.
Of course. No, it's not intuitive at all. Do you feel like the advice that you might give would be different if the person that you are working with has maybe been job searching for, a few months and that search hasn't been successful? Or is it the same as what we talked about before, sort of uncovering the target, all of that?
Well, what I would want to understand initially is, one, again, people are going to be able to predict what I'm saying now, is what's their headspace? How's their attitude? How's their tone? How are they coming off? You could be the most qualified person in the world doing a lot of activities, but if your attitude doesn't come off right, then there's a reason you're having the results that you're having. Or you could be really optimistic and cheery and have a great background, but your message is messed up. Like, this. I mean, again, this is in your lane, where people understate their accomplishments. Like, I just did my job. Like, well, there's nothing magical about that. I was just doing my job.
They buried the lead. What they did, yeah.
And then they just really underweight what their actual contributions have been. And then when you're able to kind of present that in a much more compelling way and relevant way, it's like, lo and behold, this resume was magic. Well, no kidding, because you're telling your story in a way that people, that's what they want to buy. And you had it so diluted by being humble or whatever that it wasn't that compelling. So what we really try and do is kind of deconstruct. If you're otherwise look like a good candidate for somebody, then let's look at your process, because there's probably one or more things that are broken in it that we could help you with. That's typical.
You're right. There's a lot of points where is a process where things can get bottlenecked. So I hear you sort of doing a root cause analysis to figure out
basically exactly happening. That's it.
So what about, and I get people that not only are open to many industries, but they have a diverse set of skills. And they say, I want to limit myself because I like lots of things or I don't want to pigeon myself. What advice do you have for them?
I love that question. So, Bob, should I do what my most recent job was? Should I do the thing that I've been doing the longest? Should I do what I love the most? Should I do what pays the most? And I'm like, well, those are false choices, because you're phrasing the question like I have to only pick one. And one of the things that we talk to people about is bake a cake. And what I mean by that is I think that question of, which one of these things should I do is analogous to I've got milk, I've got sugar, I've got eggs, I've got flour. Which one should I use? And so, well, you should blend them together and create a very unique story, right? One that, nobody else can tell that story. And then figure out who is the audience that's most going to resonate with that story. You were talking about your client that's been in a bunch of different industries. I would love to see what are the different industries, and how could you go, take somebody that's got both technology and retail and, whatever else, and go create a really unique story that the hiring manager can't believe. Because what do I always talk about? Unicorns. Well, you want somebody that's done all this stuff. Well, maybe you have done all this stuff. You just haven't crafted the story in a way. So, we find that, the bake a cake is essentially 3 circles. What am I really good at? What do I have demonstrated competency and accomplishments doing? That's the first circle. The second circle is, what am I interested in? And I'm going to stop short of what am I passionate about or what do I love, but what am I just interested in? I've got genuine intellectual curiosity about this. It might go all the way to passionate, but it doesn't have to. And then the third circle is basically, what are companies or industries that would reward those and are hiring? I don't want to go.
What are you good at that you like? And what are you good at that you like that somebody will pay you for?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. And so the Venn diagram of those three circles, what am I good at? What do I care about? Who's hiring, basically? That's your cake. That's blending those ingredients. And you may find that, with some opportunities, and again, you're great at helping people like tailor their resume, do a cover letter that's specific to an opportunity. In bake a cake, you might add a little bit more sugar, add a little less sugar, bake it a little longer, bake it a little less, depending on what the opportunity is and what's going to most make your story resonate with that particular opportunity. But it's the blending of those things to create a very unique value proposition that I think is the best answer to that question.
Well, and what I like about that is that you are helping people to sort of lean in more on maybe one skill or experience than other based on that analysis of what are you good at that you like, that you make money for. Because if it doesn't meet those three criteria, it maybe isn't worth focusing on that or leaning into it for that reader.
Well, exactly. And again, the way that we talk about this is the resume is the discussion guide for the conversation you want to have. And what I'm leading to is interviewing. So, when that intersection of those three things, you can start to shape how one, the bullet points on your resume, but then how you tell those stories live in an interview. And the way that I say it is the resume might get you the interview, the stories you tell will get you the job. And so when you've got kind of the conviction, the clarity, the confidence of telling those stories, confidence is contagious. When you believe, you make me believe. And so that's the way these things come across in a very authentic, genuine way. This is my story. And this is true about me. It's about what I care about. It's what I'm good at. It's an industry that I can get excited about or am excited about. And when you can convey that genuine enthusiasm, obviously people hire people. ATSs don't hire people. People hire people. And when you're showing that passion and that interest and you're sitting up straighter and your eyes are more open and you're modulating,
it makes you less apt to understate because you're speaking from a position of confidence and passion and you've got to back things up, right?
So it all kind of integrates together. These are not like spot solutions for this and spot solutions for that. It's all kind of integrated together to tell a cohesive story. And again, that's what somebody like you is so good at, is helping people craft that narrative, whether it's in resume form, LinkedIn, tell me about yourself, interviewing, networking. It's all kind of the same DNA that manifests itself in different ways.
I love that. Is there something that sort of drives you a little crazy when that you see the job seekers sort of do over and over again, perhaps even when they do have this education on hand that you're sharing, or even if they don't?
That's a great question. So we did a pilot about a year and a half ago of a CRM tool that we've built that's pre-populated with a couple million companies to help people identify the companies that they want. And then we help them develop templates in the CRM tool, email templates to do outbound reaching out to people. And we had a client who, very talented, smart lady, right experience, a big market for her to go take those skills to. And she wasn't developing any leads. And as I was talking to her, I'm like, Ann, just shut your eyes for a minute. And it's time to press the send button or to reach out to this person at this other company. You're not pressing the send button. Why is it? And she broke out into tears. And I'm like, oh my goodness, what's the matter? And she lacked confidence. She lacked self-belief. You asked me a question a few minutes ago about the person that's been in job search for a while. That's what really takes a hit, is because they're hearing the market's rejecting me. My last company let me go. Now I can't find a new job. I guess it's me. And most of the times it's not you, in terms of like the skills that you bring to the table.
Right.
It's a self-belief. And so we talk about, encouragement, empowerment, and enablement. And, encouragement is what it sounds like. Empowerment is teaching people how to fish, basically. And enablement is bringing some of the technology and tools to help them activate on this stuff. But the way I always say is, if I can only do one, I want to encourage you, because this is such a psychological, emotional kind of a thing for people. And that's what we see tends to be the holdup on people, is they've got to get to an appropriate level of self-belief. I'm not talking about arrogance. People like, and you should be humble, but it's really just a sense of self-belief, Virginia, that so many people lack. And the longer you're in job search, the more that erodes.
Yeah. And when people, even though so many people have gotten laid off between 2008 and now, we've seen so many ups and downs with things. I think about 2001 with 9/11 and the recession, and this, I would think it would be we would have gotten to a point where people don't feel bad about themselves when they get laid off. But that doesn't seem to be the case. And
it's interesting, Virginia. So one of the organizations that we have a relationship with is called SHRM, the Society for Human Resources Management. Yeah. And so the CEO is Johnny Taylor, and he's a super good guy. And one of the things that he talks about is Gen Z and younger millennials. The last recession was 2008, 2009. They weren't in college then. And so, some people sort of have missed a down cycle. And so as things do get here a little bit more challenging, it's like, well, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for this. Well, that's kind of what the hand we're being dealt right now. And nobody knows, how long and how bad or how anything. So, I do think it's going to be a challenge for some people who have not experienced a downturn. And you have to get a bit more creative and a bit more persistent and diligent about how they might go find their next opportunity.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. I'd love to sort of pivot to ask you about, one of the challenges that, a lot of my clients to talk about and are fearful of, and that's around discrimination when it comes to hiring practices. And there's all sorts of discrimination, a lot of isms, ageism, sexism, all of it, racism. What are your thoughts on, or I guess how do you advise job seekers to navigate it? And that's a big, hairy question, but has it come up in what you're working with, and how are you helping your clients?
Yeah. So I'm giving a talk in a couple of weeks on ageism. So maybe we can just pick on that one first.
Yeah.
Remember, you were asking me a few minutes ago about, like, when we get somebody who's been in job search for a while, how do we begin to engage with them? And you said root cause analysis, which is right. What we find is on like ageism, people will say, well, the reason I'm not getting a job is because of ageism. Well, maybe, but that's a convenient label to throw on everything, and it absolves you of any responsibility in how we got here. So, are you fumbling around with Zoom and you can't, oh God, I'm not really good at this stuff. Sorry, hang on for a minute. Well, you already tell me you're not comfortable with technology. That doesn't play well right now. Bringing an appropriate level of energy, and not being, sound like you're old and tired and, had trouble waking up this morning. If you're a marketer and somebody starts talking about TikTok and you go, well, I don't know, TikTok's for the kids. I don't really know that much about TikTok. You're telling me you're not relevant and you're not keeping up with like whatever the latest thing is. And is ageism the cause of all that? I don't think so. I think that that's, those are all things that the candidate can take responsibility for in that particular case.
And what you did in discussing the energy level and the familiarity with technology, those are the two biggest things that generalizations people make about more mature workers. And so by understanding what the biases are,
yep,
you are in a position to prepare and respond to them so that you're mitigating the bias before it even presents itself. You're heading off at the pass.
I think so. And exactly right. I mean, if you want to win the game, know the rules.
Right. And you don't need to know, you need to know relevant technology to your industry and the latest things in your industry. So that you should present yourself as current and modern in that. Because I think people, you don't need to know how to code if you're looking for a role in finance, but you do need to know, the latest and greatest of the finance technologies that are out there.
I mean, one of the most common words, that I'm sure finds its way into resumes and stuff is curious. And when you say, I'm not really good at that, and I haven't really kept up with that, and I don't know anything, I don't even know what crypto is and meta what, and
Bitcoin what?
Where you're basically indicating is you're not curious, actually. And there's a great book. I can't remember if we've been back and forth on this one, called Workquake by Steve Cadigan, who was LinkedIn's first CHRO. And that's the superpower now, is learning agility. Can you demonstrate, learning agility? Well, I don't work in tech. Yes, you do. Everybody works in tech. Every business is powered by tech. Farms are powered by tech. And tech is going to change in 3 years. But whatever the current thing is, it's guaranteed it's going to be something else. Some cool company with a funny name, who's the latest and greatest, whatever. And so we have to be agile learners and be able to demonstrate that to, again, I'm going back to your multi-industry client, that person can demonstrate it in spades. I think on things like racism, obviously that's a bit more insidious. So how do you start to sniff that out? Well, one is look at the leadership of the company. Is there diversity in the leadership? I think this would go to gender as well. Is there diversity in the leadership? Can you see that they've, taken any stands on social media? Are there executives on boards that are organized around these causes, supporting these causes? I think there's lots of social cues and just obvious cues that people can be looking at. I think too that, in interviewing, one of the most powerful ways you can differentiate yourself is at the section in the interview when the interviewer says, "So Virginia, do you have any questions for me?" Well, yeah. So again, it doesn't have to be a poke in the eye, but you can certainly start to address some of these things. And, can you tell me how Big Co thinks about racism and how has that the company culture changed on this, in the past 3 years? So
that's right. Things are part of your, if it's part of what made up why you want to work for a company or why you're interested, if those components are really important, then you need to understand company stances on them.
I did an interview where I was interviewing somebody last week, and we were talking about culture fit. And I'm finding that people are starting to kind of eschew that term of culture fit. And I really liked what this guy said. He said, no, what we're looking for is values alignment and cultural add. So, we don't want, the 101st of the same thing that we already have. So, but we are looking for values alignment. And I just thought that was a very neat way of kind of tying that together. And, as the candidate, you are looking for values alignment. This company, can they demonstrate that there's enough alignment on values? And probably not on every issue. That's called diversity, and diversity is good. But is this a kind of a place where somebody like me is going to be welcomed? and where I can make a difference.
I love that. I love that. Well, Bob, I'd love to have you walk us through how your job club platform supports job seekers, because it's really unique. And you put a lot of work into it. Can you sort of explain how someone can benefit from your program?
Yeah, so Career Club, we even picked the words just for the name itself is pretty indicative. It's not called Job Search Club. It's called Career Club. And so, we work and want to work with clients through their career. The on-ramp tends to be some kind of a job transition. And club is about community. Because we're just, as you can tell from several of my answers, we're really trying to help the whole person there, not just the work producing unit. And so community is really, really important. But, kind of the way that it works is, we get a new client and kind of assess in outplacement. We do a decent amount of outplacement work now where, companies are laying off people and they send them to us. So, we work with a clinical psychologist who helps back on attitude and at least getting people to neutral and getting them some coping mechanisms. He also helps with values and kind of, now that somebody's pressed the pause button long enough to kind of figure out, what do I want next? He's got some great tools and things to help people with that. Next bit is helping people with their resume and their LinkedIn profile. And we've established, some great resume writers who can help do that. We don't do that. We've actually partnered with best in class people to do that. We believe that is really, really important before somebody starts networking and applying for stuff. Again, you need to have your message down.
Yeah.
And your public profile, what does everybody do? They go to your LinkedIn profile. You don't want to be generating a lot of interest in you if your LinkedIn profile isn't consistent with what you're looking for. I mean, I know that's like telling you your name, but a lot of candidates don't.
Right. Last thing you want is for people to get reached out for roles that they're not interested at all.
Yeah. Or again, I haven't updated my LinkedIn profile for 10 years because I've been working at the same company and I never saw the need. And so I've still got a picture of me at a wedding and it's blurry and I don't look like that anymore and whatever. Right. And I'm not describing myself in current terms. And then, again, helping people activate their network. It's such an untapped thing. We all know that we need to air quote network. And most of us are not very good at it. And so, helping people activate their network, how to conduct a networking call so it's productive for them and for the other person. Then we spend a lot of time in interview prep. I mentioned earlier, we've got a CRM tool that's pre-populated with, a couple million companies so that people can curate their territory, going back to sales language. They're curating a territory of up to 60 companies that we are going to actually execute an outbound campaign on their behalf for them. So, here's your territory. We will go identify who the decision makers for your role are at that company. And basically, we're going to act like a first line of offense, not defense, but offense of reaching out to those companies in the client's name. So we create a Gmail account for the client using his or her name and some extension that makes it unique. And then when we're doing the outreach, the outbound campaigns on the client's behalf, it's not coming from Bob. It's not coming from whatever Career Club is. It's coming from the client. So it's their name that's getting out there. It's their LinkedIn profile that's being clicked. It's their email that's getting socialized around the company to have somebody get back to them. And then the last thing that we do is we've got a pretty big database of relevant executive search and recruiters. And so all of that is designed to take what we would call an omni-channel approach. There's not a one size fits all. We don't know, and the client doesn't know where their next opportunity is going to come from. What we do know is that they need to be exploring all the areas it might be coming from so that they're filling up the top of that funnel with a lot of relevant conversations that is ultimately going to yield that one yes that they need, which is their next employer.
Omni-channel, but also full life cycle approach. This end-to-end job.
Actually, what do you mean by that? That's an interesting phrase.
Oh, what I mean is that you don't just focus on the interview stage. You don't just focus on the resume development. You are there from what's my target to all the way up to interview support. And I imagine
negotiating. Yeah. It's funny too, very quickly on that, it's not uncommon. I don't want to set expectations inappropriately, but it's not uncommon that somebody will still be very new with us. And we've gone through the resume and the LinkedIn stuff, maybe they're doing their networking and some things start popping, which we hope. And Bob, I think actually I'm really interested in this one company, but I'm so early in your process. What should I do? And basically, they're afraid of saying yes too soon to something and not, quote, exploring all their options. And I'm like, well, you need to know what your decision criteria are. Does it fit your life?
Your deal breakers, all of that.
Yeah. And if it is ticking all the right boxes, then that's good. Congratulations. You won the race faster than other people win the race. But you need to know what your criteria are. And I like what you said, deal breakers, but the things that are going to make this a great fit for you and the things that might make it not a great fit for you. And if you can run it through what your filters are and it passes and passes well, why wouldn't you say yes to it?
Right. No, I totally agree. So what are your top 2 must-have job search tools or things that you need in your back pocket to be able to go on a job search? I might be a rehash of what we just talked about, which is you need to have your attitude in check and know what you want to do. But what say you?
No, but it is that, Virginia. I mean, you have to have your head screwed on straight. You have to have your message. Your message needs to be clear, concise, and compelling. Clear. I got to be able to understand what it is. Concise. You cannot ramble. Just get to the point. And it needs to be compelling. And that's where most people, I think, again, don't do a great job. And where working with somebody like you is so helpful is because you won't stop until you've got the message as good as it can be and their accomplishments as good as they can be. And so it's got to be all 3 things. Because once you've got that, then your networking is going to be really effective.
Yeah, everything takes off from there. It absolutely informs everything.
And then your interviewing is going to be so much more compelling because you know your message. And this is the one thing, you said deal breakers. I do want to pick on a point for a second. One of the things that we teach clients around branding, your personal brand, is the real hallmark, in my mind, of a brand is what it's not. What it's not. I always use the example of Tide. Right. We all know Tide is in the laundry detergent aisle, but if Tide wanted to flex its muscles, so to speak, it could say, well, I clean floors, I can clean cars, I can clean you, I can clean anything. We're the best cleaner. But they don't do that. They know what their lane is and they dominate it. They absolutely dominate laundry and have for decades. And it's the same thing for a client is once you've got, we talk about convictions lead to clarity. Clarity leads to confidence, and confidence is contagious. When you really believe your message, you're going to kill it. With the right company and the right person, they're going to love you. And you only need one. So that's why we're so into attitude and messaging, because everything else starts to take care of itself.
Yeah. No, I love that. So my last and final question for you, Bob, is, we've talked a lot about what you've built, and now we are closing out on the last quarter of 2022. What do you have? Do you have anything new or exciting down the road for next year that you are open to sharing?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking. So I mentioned it a minute ago. The talent cycle has flipped or is flipping as we speak from a red hot talent market, which is fueled in large part by easy money and venture capital and private equity and low interest rates. And, so everybody's just, burning up money trying to grow. Mm-hmm. And obviously that has changed. So all of a sudden we kind of went from fifth gear to, I won't say reverse, but at least, second gear. And so companies are letting go of folks, whether they have to, or they think it's prudent to kind of start trimming it back a little bit because we don't know what's ahead. So, our business has kind of repackaged the offering to address what companies are looking for when they've had to let go of people. And, outplacement, this might be a little self-serving. It doesn't look like it's had very much innovation in a really, really long time. And we're trying to take a much more human-centric approach, to helping people who've experienced a loss. So outplacement is really the big idea for us. Is, it's unfortunate that companies are letting go of people, but it's going to happen with or without us. And so we want to provide the best, safest place for people to land so that they can figure out their why and what they want to do and be back working and happy again as quickly as possible.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I agree with you on the need for innovation in that space. Look, it's been a while since there's been lots of layoffs. So I guess it's not super
fair enough. That's a good point too. The other thing I would just encourage people to do is we do podcasting like you, and we've been very blessed to get some, really high quality guests. And for people that are interested in, things around career, we tend to focus a bit on consumer packaged goods and retail and the
name of your podcast.
Creatively, it's Career Club LinkedIn Live with Bob Goodwin. So we do it as a LinkedIn Live, which is fun. But then we just upload it immediately, the audio portion immediately to all the major podcast platforms. We've been, yeah. I mean, we had like the CEO of Procter & Gamble on talking about leadership stuff that was just amazing. 3-star general talking about these kinds of things, all the way down to our mutual friend Hannah Mason was on getting into the particulars of resumes and stuff like that. So everything in between.
That's great. Well, Bob, thank you so much. Your service is one of a kind. I love that you support people from end to end and hit on the components that make for not just a successful job search, but a job search where someone's going to be happier at the end. Because you certainly don't want to land the wrong job. And I feel like the measures you put into place help people to make that happen. So thank you for taking the time.
Well, Virginia, thank you. I've been following you on LinkedIn for a long time, and you and a couple of your colleagues are definitely some of the biggest thought leaders on LinkedIn, and helping people with what I believe is just really high quality, both advice and services. So that you would think to have me on means a lot. So thank you.
You've been listening to The Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco. To learn more about storytelling strategies to catch the eye of today's online skim hiring and decision makers, please visit www.virginiafrancoresumes.com.